Do you ever feel like a hamster on a hamster wheel, not getting anywhere new? Perhaps you've hit a plateau that has you asking, is this it? Have you accomplished all you've set out to do in life and are not feeling as fulfilled as you thought you would? It is normal at midlife to reassess what's working for you and what's not. It's also normal to want to reclaim your time, your energy, and your joy. Let's make the best out of the second half of our lives by having more fun, experiencing more peace, and feeling more joy. If any of this resonates with you, then this podcast is for you. I'm Megan Bayless-Bartley. Now let's get ready to shift our shit. Hello there, Megan Bayless-Bartley from the Mindfulness Center here with Elizabeth McCormack. We're talking about perimenopause and menopause. This is episode 3, part 2. We're talking about the identity earthquake. And in part 2 here, we're going to talk more about the relationships around us and how part 1, we talked about maybe our own relationship with ourselves and how that earthquake is happening. But there is a little bit of earthquakes happening also with our kids and parenting, our own parents and their needs and our role and how do we help them or not help them, even maybe our roles with our spouses as well. So what do you think about in this identity earthquake with relationships?
So I spend a lot of time with, women in middle age, right? That's kind of my niche at this point where it's like, okay, what are we doing in the space when it comes to parenting? Like, let's, kind of separate them out and say, what's happening there? Megan mentioned previously, like we move from being the orchestrator of all things kid, and then we move to, okay, my job is not to control everything they're doing. My job is to become an advisor. I really do pretend that my teenagers are cats. So if you treat your teenager like a cat, don't go to them. Don't go tell them what you need from them. Don't tell them what they need to do. Wait for them to come to you. A cat does not like you to come all in hot and bothered. A cat wants you to sit back and wait for them to come to you. So I really like to kind of think about my job is to advise. My job is to wait to be asked, not just offer everything I got because they're like, please, I've had enough. And it doesn't take much for me to get the brush off in this space. And so I'm paying attention to the energy that they're giving off. Now, I'm only raising boys, so that has its own, characteristics, uniqueness, and all of that of trying to turn two gentlemen into decent adults that can function independently and take care of themselves and all the things, whether that's car maintenance, laundry, cooking, eating well, just taking care of their own doctor's appointments. Because once that 18 birthday drops, you're out. You are out. The doctor does not want to talk to you no more. You are not allowed access to that information. It's a whole, the game is up. And so you then say, okay, I'd like you to take good care of yourself. What does that look like for you? What kind of help do you need from a doctor? And are you having those healthy conversations? Whether that's talking to them about appropriate and healthy sexual behavior in relationships, or I, try a lot of times to wait for them to come ask me. But I also really like a good conversation about the education of your own body and all of that to happen when they're trapped in the car. So I am that person that gets my kid kind of stuck in there. And then I'm like, let me just tell you some things. Of course, they're going to, oh, this is the worst. But once I get to talking, they get to listening, and it's kind of fun. I kind of make a game of the fact that it's uncomfortable and just kind of poke fun at it. But they do need information. They do not get information from anywhere else that I feel is healthy or helpful. So we still, even though we don't want to, it's uncomfortable, but it still needs to happen. And so we've really got to kind of get into the space of, okay, what is my role here? Where is my lane with my kids? What are they asking for? Am I trying to get a relationship from them that they're not interested in having with me? And it's like, how do I respect who they are becoming, rather than who I want them to be? And yes, once they no longer reside in my house every night, my sphere of influence has shifted. I'm completely aware, even with the one that still sleeps in my house, we're spending a lot more time with friends. My influence has shifted. It is not as big as it used to be. And especially with the one that's now just popping in on breaks, my sphere of influence has completely come back. And it's a big change. And it's something to accept that now they are going to become who they're going to become.
Yes.
And I have to let go of my control, of my desire for it to be a certain way. And it really is freeing. It really does lower your anxiety of like, I need to make sure that they are successful. It's like, your life is now going to be what you make of it. I'm happy to be here for you. I'm happy to encourage. Of course, I'm still paying the bills. However, we're having conversations about these bills. We're not just charging things and not being honest about, is this still my responsibility or should this be your responsibility?
Absolutely.
And it's pretty tough to have because it's expensive out there. Like, Mom, will you buy me some laundry detergent so I have laundry detergent at college? It's like,
wow.
Yeah, I will, because I really would like you to clean those clothes.
Right.
But we do need to consider, like, are we being smart with our laundry detergent? Are we sharing it with everyone in the fraternity house?
Yes.
Are we being mindful that it is easily $20 to just have some of these basics?
Yeah.
So it's that kid space transitioning in this middle space is getting real being comfortable with uncomfortable. We've said that several times now. And understanding what your role is.
You know, it's interesting. I've been reflecting, especially with my husband, about like he and I are both so stubborn of people, and we know our kids well enough to know that they are very stubborn people. And so we survived our launching after high school into college and all the things, and we figured it out and had certain skill sets and not certain skill sets. And so part of me is like, okay, well, whatever they don't know, they'll figure out, you know? And if they don't know, they'll ask it, they'll Google it, they'll YouTube it, they'll, whatever.
We didn't have Google.
I know.
And we
did great.
Survived. We printed out maps. We didn't have a cell phone. Yes. I drove from Illinois to North Carolina as a freshman after my freshman year of college. Nothing.
Right.
I had nothing. I was in a car with stuff and money, and that was figure it out. Like nothing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I think they'll be fine. Okay, let's shift gears and talk a little bit about parents and as parents age. We just went through an episode where we had a parent who was in the hospital, my mother-in-law called, needed help, called an ambulance for father-in-law. It definitely sent some shock waves through our family. Everything turned out okay, but it really, there was a oh shit moment of, what's our role here? How are we going to deal with this, and how much do we participate? How much do we not participate? How much what boundaries do we allow? Because they're still functioning adults living in a house together. Like, it's a tricky process.
It really is. And so much about it is changing that you don't know because you're absolutely not in control of it in any kind of way. And so it's like you have a different experience with parents that live when you live locally.
Yes.
What is your involvement?
Yes.
And then we have both parents at a distance.
Yes.
And it's like, when do we show up and help you? What's the thing that you need us or don't need us for? Like, hip replacements, knee replacements. Oh, those are really big rocks that have to be dealt with. And getting all the doctor's appointments, getting people to help them because they live so far away from us. And how do we navigate that?
So I've had this conversation multiple times with clients who are entrepreneurs, high achievers, like doing all the things. And the thing that I've asked them, and I think that this applies because it's also how I've started looking at how to deal with aging parents, is, am I being asked for help? Because as parents, you're treating your kids like cats.
Yep.
You're
Yep.
kind of hands off until you're being asked
Ask
for
for help.
help. If we go into high anxiety mode because something happens, like we haven't been asked for help, maybe our parent didn't notify us of something and we heard it through the grapevine or whatever. And so part of this is, my rule of thumb is, are we being asked for help? Are you just wanting me to have information, or are you asking me to actively participate in this? And
That's tough.
And, depending on the relationship you have with your parents as well, do you clarify, are you asking me for help, or are you just giving me this information, and do I want to help? Am I mentally and emotionally able to be there with you? Am I physically able to be there with you if you don't live nearby? If I live all the way across the country, like, can I take X amount of time off of work to do that? Or, do you ask friends for help, So it's a tricky process, but that's all shifting and changing, especially as parents get older and may or may not need help or may not ask for help. You know what I mean? Like,
Very
that's
tricky.
the tricky part. So, and, that's why you're not going to necessarily have access to your parents' doctors, right? Again, like, there's boundaries there. And so part of this is, how much do I participate? How much do I not participate? And
how much about the planning? I mean, I've been watching and being a member of a aging congregation and all the different things. I watch families go through this process of what do we do? What happens when someone dies?
Yes.
How do we do that well
Yes.
and with respect and dignity? And how do I arrange for the pieces that I'm not in control of?
Absolutely.
It's so complicated.
Yes.
It's so hard to say, when do we step in? What are the parents' expectations? Do they have long-term care plans?
Yep.
Do they have a plan of, oh, I didn't make a plan, I'm just going to wing it?
Yep.
Wow, that feels scary. Or I'm going to live here, and then when I'm done here, I will go here. But a lot of folks are just kind of kicking and screaming, don't put me in the nursing home. And that is a narrative that as folks that aren't able to provide 24-hour care or don't want the relationship to look that way, it's really tough to say, what do you need? What am I able to provide? And that can't be the same thing. Those are probably going to be two different things.
And are all people willing to have that conversation? Like, there are a lot of conversations not being had. There are conversations I'm having with my kids that, one of my kids asked me, like, how did you decide to parent us this way? And I said, well, because Dad and I were parented a certain way, and we took the best things about that and the not so great things about that and decided to do it our own way. And he's like, oh my God, this is, like, I don't see
complicated.
It's complicated, but I don't see other parents doing it this way. I see kids and parents arguing a lot, and we just don't argue a lot, and so that was, Anyway, we need to wrap up this episode, but our perimenopause and menopause affects our relationships in lots of ways. We talked a little bit about parenting, and then our aging parents. We're going to talk more specifically about your primary love relationship, whether it's in a marriage or a partnership or dating, in a whole episode all by itself. So stay tuned for that episode.